Friends for Conservation and Development FCD in Belize has teamed up with Balam Association of Guatemala in combating the territorial war that is currently ongoing in the Chiquibul Forest. The Chiquibul Forest Reserve landscapes go beyond Belize's border into Guatemala, which then becomes Montes Mayas Biosphere Reserve. Rafael Manzanero, Executive Director of Friends for Conservation and Development, spoke about some of the agreements made with Balam in order to promote conservation and protection of the two reserves.
The first one being Asociación Balam, that we have here today, Byron Castellanos. He is the Executive Director of this NGO that has been operating in Petén for quite some years. But the difference about Balam now is that instead of just working on, in the northern part of Petén, they basically have moved also their efforts over the last 4 years or so into the southern part of Petén, which is technically our main area of target and what we call it as ground zero of incursions into Belize. The second agreement that we have is Balam FCD and Man Munisur, which means the Commonwealth of Communities of South Petén. That includes 5 of the municipal alcaldes and the municipalities across on what we would term it as the southern region of the Petén department. Starting from Melchor de Mencos and way down to Jalacté in the Guatemalan landscape. Under that agreement, basically there are 2 main objectives that are very much important and salient. The first one is we believe that there is one ecosystem and there are 2 flags, Belize and Guatemala. And in order really to maintain this ecosystem, we have to combine our efforts together in terms of looking at that landscape from more a regional level. And the second objective was basically to look at the reduction of conflict on the communities located on the adjacency zone. So those are basically the 2 main objectives of such an agreement. The third one is the 2 of the research stations, which is Las Cuevas Research Station in Belize, in the Chiquibul, that we manage, and then Balam also has a research station across in Guatemala and Petén, also called Las Guacamayas. And then the fourth one, a very important one, we have forged a binational alliance over the last 4 years with alcaldes from both Belize and Guatemala for one main purpose: protection of the watersheds that is also shared. In the Chiquibul and the Chiquibul water, it starts from the mountains of Belize, it goes into Guatemala. The first ones who absorb and who take the liquid that is coming out from the Chiquibul are basically Guatemalan communities.
There have been numerous reports of apprehension of illegal Guatemalans who extract shate leaves and gold from Belizean soil. Brian Castellanos, Executive Director of Balam, through translator Claudia Oranz, spoke on some of the reasons there are so many incursions into the Chiquibul Forest.
Abandoned by the government of Guatemala
por más de 50 años.
For over 50 years now.
Degradación ambiental. El bosque en esta parte de Guatemala está desapareciendo significativamente.
The forest in this part of Guatemala is significantly disappearing by now. Populations are mainly indigenous. The whole of that population has an influence, a direct influence in the Belizean territory. The main causes that promote the flux of people coming in Belize are poverty and organized crime. This organized crime finances these poor communities for them to trespass the border and come in Belizean territory to extract the natural resources.
FCD and Balam have been working on an environmental strategy which is a more tactical force. Orange translates.
We are working on an environmental security strategy.
Enfocado a proteger el bosque en Guatemala.
Focused to protect the forest in Guatemala and to reduce the illegal trafficking of resources from Belizean territory into Guatemala. We do joint patrolling with the government. We work with judges. We work with the government. And this graphic shows the different wood products that we have confiscated.
Other than tactical combats, there are projects that have been created mostly for the Guatemalans to decrease incursions. These projects have benefited over 200 families. They're not funded by the Guatemala government, but international counterparts such as the UK, European Union, and US government.
Presently, we are working in the promotion of productive projects in Guatemalan communities.
Este comunitario
This person here
entraba a Belice
used to come in Belize
para extraer esta hoja que es el chate.
to extract shate. Now we are helping them to produce shate in Guatemala. Guatemalan community people come in Belize to extract gold and fauna to produce, sell, and eat because they are poor. We are working with community people now to plant different products so they can reinforce their food security. We call them agroforest systems.
And while some of us may have the impression that Belizeans do not go into Guatemala illegally, Castellano says we do, but with interest other than gold and shate leaves.
Of course it happens,
pero con otro tipo de intereses.
but different interests motivate them.
Comercio,
Commerce, for example,
traer productos de Guatemala a Belice sin ningún control.
bringing products, not paying taxes, for example.
Ese es un problema de hace 50 años. Ocurre todos los días en
That
la
happens
frontera.
every day, and it's been happening for over 50 years.
Por eso uno de los acuerdos firmados entre Guatemala y Belice
That's why one of the agreements signed by Guatemalan and Belizean governments
tiene que ver con comercio,
has to do with commerce.
porque tenemos que ordenar la actividad comercial
That is why we need to organize the commercial activity between both countries.
para que los que comercian paguen impuestos en Belice y paguen impuestos en Guatemala.
For those who make the exportations and importations illegally pay their taxes.
Porque ese comercio de contrabando
That contraband
es el que financia
is that one of the sources that finance
otro tipo de actividades ilegales
other kind of illegal activities
que tienen que ver con el bosque.
that have to do with the forest too.
Sencillamente son economías ilegales.
They are simply illegal economies.
Debemos promover el comercio entre los dos países.
We need to promote the commerce, legal commerce between both countries.
Es el mejor negocio para Belice y para Guatemala.
That would be the best of both worlds for Belize and Guatemala.
Both organizations have signed an extended agreement of cooperation for the period 2016 to 2021. One of the main reasons for incursions, as reported by Balam, is poverty and the abandonment of the adjacency zone communities by the Guatemalan government. While most of the projects being worked on are not funded by their government, Byron Castellanos, Executive Director of Balam Association, says they are confident that their new government will provide the support they need.
For years, the government has forgotten these populations, but we believe that this government has made a change and that they are sincerely working now, and that is why we are working with them. It cannot be, a 50-year problem cannot be easily solved, but we are on the right path. We are asking the Guatemalan government that we really need more support. Our Foreign Affairs Minister is the main supporter for his own government to solve the problems and help the poor communities in the adjacency zone.
Rafael Manzanero is the Executive Director of Friends of Conservation and Development. He spoke of the Belizean government's absence on the ground compared to Guatemala.
You are correct in terms of the uphill struggles that we have had, it is really much to our interest in actually to see how in a couple of years, Balam has been able to mobilize a lot of other counterparts and support systems in the southern part of Petén. At this point in time here in Belize, for us, we felt that, either we have to learn more about how they do their policy advocacy for one, or either we are still not really reaching to the right people on how to make the particular changes. I have been, as how you will gather over the years, trying to welcome people to go and see the true reality in the Chiquibul. And that has not really happened so much, admittedly. In fact, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Guatemala has been twice into Chiquibul. Carlos Raúl Morales has been to Chiquibul twice. And frankly, we have not really had, it has only been a limited number of high-level personnel that have reached to Chiquibul, from the Belizean side. And so I think that, there's much more to be done. I feel that unless one really can see it, the idea of the media really to bring up the circumstances have been really positive, but you will gather that unless you really can go and see it, then I think it really marks a whole different kind of a context. So I think there's much more to be done.
With the numerous reports on incursions into Belize and all the new projects that are being implemented, it begs the question, will the incursions really stop? Castellanos spoke of the reaction of the Guatemalans when Balam advises them to not enter Belize illegally.
When we approach the communities and ask them not to enter Belize illegally,
Lo primero que nos preguntan,
the first thing they ask,
¿qué oportunidades me das para que yo pueda desarrollarme económicamente?
what do you give me instead for me to develop economically here?
En pocas palabras, dame otra opción.
In few words, give me another option.
Por eso es que nosotros promovemos los proyectos productivos,
That is why we promote the productive projects,
los sistemas agroforestales,
the agroforestal systems,
porque esa es una alternativa
because it's one alternative
para aliviar la pobreza,
that can alleviate poverty,
para que produzcan adentro de Guatemala
for them to produce within Guatemala
y que no tengan necesidad de entrar a Belice.
and not to be in need of trespassing the Belizean border.
Balam and FCD urge both countries to implement the 13-point agreement